a law was maliciously created, in my opinion, and passed in 2024 that targeted our school. So not even 6 months after it was passed, that law was enacted to reconstitute the Board of Education Explosion Incorporated. We are the only school that this has happened to, not only in the state of Louisiana, but in the country, in the entire country.
As a parent, when my children were in elementary school and this testing, it's like, okay, you need to start eating breakfast every morning because I need you to be prepared for these tests. And then they're studying more. They're taking tutoring sessions. They're trying to catch up and work on areas that they weren't doing so well in. So it's already a stressful time.
Yeah.
And now you're picking them up and moving them to a different location.
And they shorten the day for 30 minutes. They shorten the instructional day by 30 minutes. We know what's going on. Don't continue to be a part of something that is a disservice to our community, the disservice to our kids.
You've spoken about how everyone's been impacted and what your message to them. How have you been impacted? What has that experience been like?
So my family has been impacted a lot by this, unfortunately. Not only you appoint this replacement board unlawfully, but filed their own litigation suing me, my husband, my daughter, my mom, who has nothing to do with the audit or anything. So now we're being dragged through this, costing them resources and time and stress.
And now you have made so many achievements, so many accomplishments. At the very beginning, you mentioned that Impact Charter is no longer under your leadership. What are some of the challenges that you have experienced? Because we've talked about all the accolades and all of the decision-making and the foundation of it. What are some of the challenges?
So I will say as it refers to, impact no longer than my leadership. So my most current and biggest challenge that I'm facing right now is this experience of how politics can interfere with something that we're doing great. So you see these things in movies and, you read about them in other places, but never experience that it will happen directly to me or, right in front of me. And what I've experienced over this 11, 12-year experience is how political agendas can be utilized to overtake or disrupt something great. So, however, I'm also a believer that God does things for a reason. And sometimes he close certain doors to open new doors or to force me out of a level of complacency to into those areas and rams to operating on a bigger space, impacting more than what I was already doing. So over time in the years, I talk about with the experience I've gained 10 years ago, I wouldn't been able to talk about most of these things because I was very young. I was inexperienced. However, I was very skilled and gifted, which is how Impact Charter, God blessed me with those gifts to do that. However, through time, you do gain skills and experience to be able to grow and to new levels. So the reality is, even though we see ourselves growing, sometimes we become complacent, even though we know we can do more, but we sometimes stick with what's familiar because it's safe. So even though things happen, like what happened to Impact Charter School, where law was maliciously passed and targeted just for Impact Charter School that would empower the state school board called BESE, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, to reconstitute our board to overtake our school. So because Impact Charter School is a charter school, it's governed by the nonprofit board, Education Explosion, which we shared with you, started out as a tutoring program. A state school board, or BESE, does not have rights or power over a private nonprofit company because they're just a party to the contract. Bessie and Education Explosion is in a contract to operate a school. So the only way to control that school is to put people on the board that they can control. So legally, you can't remove a nonprofit board because they have its own bylaws. Is is governed by its own stakeholders. It's not a political subdivision. It's not a municipality. So a state agency should not interfere with nonprofit organizations. So a law was maliciously created, in my opinion, and passed in 2024 that targeted our school. So not even 6 months after it was passed, that law was enacted to reconstitute the Board of Education Explosion Incorporated. We are the only school that this has happened to, not only in the state of Louisiana, but in the country, in the entire country. So right now, our original board is they immediately filed lawsuits. So there's litigation happening to rule that law unconstitutional and as it has been applied to Education Explosion, because we believe based on the law, it was a violation of our the U.S. Constitution contract clause because that law wasn't in place when we signed the contract, our latest contract 3 years ago. Also, there was no due process. They just unilaterally voted and changed it without the board's approval or informing them properly in or anything. It just happened. So it's one of those very egregious things that really we are all in disbelief that this has happened. You, like I said, you see these type of things on movies, but the fact that it has happened in real life, you have 450 children that were once enrolled in a high performing, high quality, B rated, nationally recognized school is suffering under leadership that was not part of the mission and vision, don't understand the mission and vision, was not part of the design, and they're holding the name of a high performing institution, but that is not what is occurring right now.
Okay. So let's back up. So I want to make sure that I understand correctly and the listeners have a good understanding of what you're saying. So there was a nonprofit. There is a nonprofit. So I will say that's at the top, right? And
Education
it,
Explosion.
Education Explosion, and it governs the actual charter school, Impact Charter School,
Yes.
right? And Education Explosion has board members that where you were included as well that makes decisions over this school.
So I wasn't a board member, I was the chief executive officer.
Chief exec. Okay, you were the chief executive officer, but still, that was a nonprofit that was over a charter school, and you're saying that a government entity, Bessie, has come in and you said reconstituted. So they have placed their own members in your nonprofit.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is very important for all nonprofits that are out there. It is
Yes.
very important for, you to take heed and to listen to this conversation because like I've never heard it before. And as you've already stated, this is a precedent. It's never been done before.
Yes. So it's important because if they succeed, it could set the precedent for any government agency to create a law that will empower themselves to take over a nonprofit, all of their assets, all of their funds, all of their property, everything.
Wow. Okay. And so that is what has happened as of right now, even though they have yet to succeed, they have already placed themselves in those roles and have taken over that Impact Charter School.
Yes, they have taken over all future revenue from the state. They have not been able to take over the existing funds because the banks decided to freeze those funds until they receive a judge order stating who's the real education explosion board. So you have our original board that's according to the bylaws and according to federal law and internal revenue codes saying that by this law, we are education explosion. And then you have the replacement board that Bessie appointed saying, according to this law we put through last year, we're the education explosion board. So the banks are confused because they never seen anything like it. And they understand that state law does not trump federal law, but because the case is in federal court for that judge to interpret who's the real education explosion board, the banks have frozen all past assets until they receive that clarity. But because the state is who did this, the state of Louisiana, they are sending all future revenues to the replacement board to operate the school.
Wow, you have said a mouthful there. So, and what I did catch was that they have implemented something that they have kind of like made it retroactive, and is to a point that you were not even usually when a law is trying to be created, it's from that point moving forward. There's usually a grandfather clause where that wouldn't apply to anything prior to that date. That's number one, is what I heard.
Yes, and what they're I'm sorry, I don't want to cut
No,
your
go
your
ahead,
thought.
go ahead.
But what they're trying to say is in the charter contract that Bessie wrote, because they are the authors of the contract, they had a clause in there that says the charter operator will be agreeable to any future laws. So basically, almost like they knew that was coming. However, our counsel take the position in the argument that you cannot, so they're trying to say that was a waiver. Our counsel is in the position you cannot waive a constitutional right, especially on something that's retroactive. It has to be clear and transparent what you're waiving because it changes a right. It alters a right. So that's the part that we have in state court and federal court that they're looking at, because you cannot retroactively apply a law that we did not agree to because it violates constitutional protections like our property rights, our liberty rights, that you cannot apply that and say, oh, this is a new law. We can reconstitute this private 501c3 nonprofit board just because we're in a contract with you to operate a school. So basically, one party of the contract can take over another party of the contract. And then when you further dig into the civil code, it states that if there's a part of the law that's where there's ambiguity, it goes against the author. So where it's not clear, they're the author of the contract. It wasn't clearly stated that that clause that they're stating is saying that we waive a constitutional right, because it doesn't say that. It means we procedurally will agree to anything that comes under the charter school law procedurally, not something that's substantive that changes a right. So, and violates constitutional protections.
Okay. So now I'm confused on something, and I would like your clarification if you can. Now, I understand and I respect that this is still an ongoing litigation. And so I know that you have to be very careful on, what you say, and your responses. So I totally understand that. And for all of our listeners, you all should understand that as well. Now, here's what I don't understand. And it's nothing from what you've said so far. What I don't understand is that your school is a B-rated school. Your school has received so many accolades, so much recognition for multiple years, for consecutive years. It is a state-of-the-art facility. I haven't heard you say there were any complaints. When I did my research, I didn't hear any complaints, right? On the other hand, as I am looking at your charter, which is different than the other charters in Baker, in Baker, Louisiana. Your charter is a solely owned. Am I saying that right?
Single
A
site,
solely
a single site.
a single site
Hmm.
location compared to a CMO. And if I where are my notes? A CMO is more of a
Charter management
charter
organization.
management yes, a charter management organization where there are multiple charters. They report to the same head, basically. So
Yes.
like in Texas, there's a school called ILS. I think it's International Leadership School or Academy, something to
Or
that.
Idea Public Schools. You
For you,
probably,
Idea Public School.
yeah, you
Okay.
probably, and they're big in Texas too, Idea Public Schools.
Idea. Okay, I
Yeah.
hadn't heard of them. I did take notes about it in Louisiana, but not in Texas. But I know, so there's one in multiple cities. So
Mm-hmm.
that is more of a CMO where there are multiple under the same umbrella. Yours is solely owned by Education Explosion.
Right. It's his only site. It's just
It's
one
its own,
school. It's not a
it's one,
franchise.
there you go. It's not a franchise. Now, when I look at the other ones in Baker, from what I researched, one of them was Geo, and I watched a video and I saw a gentleman, was it Ron Haley who was speaking on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes. He
I
was the
watched
board attorney.
that. Okay, so I watched Mr. Haley. I listened to him, and he was saying, please, give us a chance like you did Geo. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what does he mean by that? So when I'm looking at it, and again, I'm a truth seeker, I'm a problem solver, I'm the
Mm-hmm.
bridge builder. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here, right?
Yes.
And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, let me do my research on Geo. And what I saw was that this article, and I have it saved somewhere, that it said the school was an F school. And the people that were over it were actually planning to close the school. But instead, Bessie, I think this was at the last minute, and this is, I'm gonna say allegedly because articles can be wrong, right? And so it said that, what'd you say?
I say, yeah, of course, that's
So
true.
articles can be wrong, but it said that it was F-rated. They were planning on closing the school, but Bessie gave them the opportunity to, I believe, stay open and move to a different location, if I understood that correctly. So I'm trying to figure out what even prompted or caused this litigation to ensue. What actually sparked it?
So this was all started by an audit. So what I didn't share is, in addition to our accolades and all the great things that Impact Charter has done, Impact Charter School has also have had over a decade of clean audits every single year. So every charter school is required to have financial audits by an auditor that's on the legislative auditors state approved list. So each year, our board has hired 3 different auditors over the 10-year tenure to audit our books to make sure that they're clean, they're healthy, and we're doing things that we're supposed to do, because the board does not run the day-to-day, they govern. So the audit report gives them a collective report of the details of everything that happens within that organization. So all of the assets, the financials, the test scores, they report everything. So we've never had a single finding because, again, I will push hard checks and balances, policies and procedures, and we made sure we did everything by the book. Now, the Louisiana legislative auditors have another side called the investigative side. So that side is supposed to go and investigate any type of fraud inquiries, or if they are going to investigate fraud or anything like that on a state agency, and they can also do charter schools. But those investigations cannot be triggered by just a regular citizen. It has to be requested by a legislator, a state representative, or a state senator, or a governor, or someone with a high ranking elected official. So we later found out that our state representative, by her name is Barbara Carpenter, requested that audit. I don't know why, because she's never been to our school or attended our school. She lives in Baker. So I'm not sure why she would do that. But by her doing that, it turned into something very malicious. Not when they audited the financials with they did a more comprehensive audit, because instead of sampling just a few invoices, they scanned every invoice and looked at every invoice that was in our file cabinet. So every vendor. And after, I guess, they could not find anything, they started investigating me as an individual. They started pulling my phone records, my emails. They were questioning anybody that was connected to me. They almost as if they were conducting a criminal investigation. And when they came out with the audit report, it had me as the focus in every single finding, as if I conducted criminal misconduct, which was so untrue. Our board tried to write a rebuttal to all of that, explaining with our proof how every transaction was board approved. It was aligned to my role as the CEO, and it was legally compliant. And they supported documentation for every single finding, but they left it in the report like that. And then soon as they hit the news, they flooded it in the news over and over and over again, as if they couldn't find nothing wrong. They were going to go overboard to make it appear as if I did something wrong, so that they can enact that law that I just told you about, to replace the board and take over the school. So the agenda was to take over the school. When they did not have anything natural to bring it down, they couldn't complain about the grades because it was high performing. They couldn't complain about our financials because we had perfect audits. Even with the Department of Education, they did their own audits on our school, and all of them were perfect. So they did an investigative audit, and they wrote it how they wanted to write it, so that they can trigger the law or activate the law they had just passed, specifically that was made for impact, to be able to take over the school and take everything that the school had. And they did it so fast. They weren't expecting us to be able to fight back or to fight back. And that's where we are now, because even though it's a law, it doesn't mean it's good law. It doesn't mean that it's constitutional, and it doesn't mean that it's right. And even at the board where they made the vote to replace the board, they didn't bring up the audit once as the reason. They did not mention that the reason for them doing that was the audit. They said, "Oh, we asked for records requests and you didn't provide them." So asking for records is still not a reason to reconstitute a governing board of a high performance school that's been around over 10, 11 years. And even that excuse wasn't true, because when we look at the dates of when they requested those records, the contract says the school has 3 days to give them. The 3 days had not even passed yet before they reconstituted the board. So they pretty much gave less than a 2-day notice saying, "We're going to reconstitute this board, put our own people there," and gave us less than a 2-day notice. Did not say why. And at the meeting, when we were trying to find out why, they said, "Oh, we didn't get records requests." And it was done. And they had the names already. They had 7 names already picked out who they were going to put there.
I'm speechless.
Yeah.
I'm speechless. So their documentation, or the documentation, says you have 3 days to provide the documentation. They didn't even, as you're saying, didn't even abide by that. They didn't even give you 3 days. Then they are creating laws that they are making it retroactive. It sounds like they are making decisions that are actually that are impacting the children.
Yes,
They are
because
they are making these decisions so quick, and it's not even thought out. And that's one thing about me, is I try to think things all the way through. And so they're making these decisions, is not being all the way thought through, to where they couldn't even access the funds.
yes.
And so, which means that at some point, and there's so much on this online, I don't know what all to believe and what not to believe, but seems like some bills were not being paid.
So, yes, so let me talk about that. Not only they could not access that they refuse to pay the bills. And to this day, they're not paying bills. I'm still getting calls from vendors that still have my number looking for payment. And I have to tell them, look, you need to contact who's responsible. So the first bill they decided not to pay is the rent for the building. They refused to pay the rent for the building. And so after the governance for the building owners decided to give them notice that if you're 2 months behind, if you don't pay your rent, then they're gonna have to start the eviction proceedings. So instead of them paying the rent, being they in the middle of the school year, so all of this took place when they reconstituted, that took place in February. They didn't pay for March. They did not pay for April. So they got the notice warning in April. So they send a check for March. And then 5 days later, they put a stop payment on the check. So at that point, it was clear they weren't going to pay. So when they got the notice saying, okay, it was clear you guys are not going to pay, they're going to have to start eviction proceedings. That's when they said, oh, no, we're going to move. So in the middle of testing season in April, where they have state testing, they packed up all the kids and the whole entire school in a 3-day period and moved them into an old, dilapidated building down the street, where it's a history of mold and asbestos in that building that building had been closed up and shut down and out of use for over a year. That building was also featured in a news article on a CBS national news article because of the condition that the facility was in and why it had to be shuttered and closed. So they unshuttered it and moved the kids and the staff in that building, and that's where they are today.
So you said they have refused to pay rent. Then when they did, they put a stop payment in April. And my mind is going all over the place because I'm thinking about all the people that have been impacted by this, the children as well as the parents. Now, I'm thinking if I am a parent, and I'm not sure at what point they were actually notified of these changes, but I'm just thinking like I already have a job that I have to work at. And now I have to think about my child. Who is going to be, you know, over that? There's so many different changes. Now you're telling me that my child has to move schools and they're going from a state of the art building to somewhere that has been closed down, dilapidated, and the previous people that were in that school had already moved to a different school. Am I correct with that?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And during testing, see, actions always speak louder than words. When you really care, you take those additional steps, you think these through further, and I'm really shocked. Like I said, I'm speechless because
Yeah.
it, it is testing and it's already stressful because as a
Mhm.
parent, when my children were in elementary school and it's testing, it's like, okay, baby, you need to start eating breakfast every morning because I need you to be prepared for these tests. And then they're studying more. They're taking tutoring sessions. The last thing they're trying to catch up and work on areas that they weren't doing so well in. So it's already a stressful time.
Yeah.
And now you're picking them up and moving them to a different location that
Mhm.
and then you mentioned earlier that they are no longer doing the harambe, so there's no longer that motivational factor at the beginning to even conjure up that energy and that spirit that's needed to get through all these
And they
changes.
shorten the day for 30 minutes. They shorten the instructional day by 30 minutes. They move teachers around. Remember, I shared earlier how I'm very intentional about how we pair our teachers, what they teach, what they teach. They've made so many changes that I would have never approved. Not only that, hundreds of families have dropped since last school year versus this year, but hundreds of families did stay. And not because they just love what's going on, but there aren't a lot of options. And that was the whole point of bringing Impact Charter School to Baker. And if they had a preferable option, they would have gone to it. So they're holding on to the hope of, well, at least I know the teachers who there. I'm familiar with them. So my kids are familiar with them. So I'll just keep them there. But who's hurting because I know learning isn't taking place. A lot of the programs that we utilize have been canceled. I know that because again, they're calling me for payment. And even though I can't give them payment, they're just pretty much existing. The building that was designed for the students that I talked about that we built over 10 years ago is now sitting vacant and blight property because of this selfish act. So again, who's suffering the most from this are the kids.
Yes, it definitely sounds as such. And I can understand both the parents who made the decision to move their children somewhere else and those that wanted them to stay because they, like I said at the very beginning, they've already built their life around it. Their job is around there.
Yes.
They're familiar with the teachers. The child enjoys the teacher, even though all the other factors have changed. It's very disappointing, and especially that they're going through this and it does not sound like any of it has been merited.
It has
You had
not, and just
passed, yeah, you had passed all of the audits, and for it to still come down to another audit, an investigative audit that was requested by, State Representative Barbara
Carpenter. Yeah.
Carpenter.
Mhm.
It's just so unfair, and my heart goes out to you who has built this and had this vision along with your husband, and to the children who have impacted. I mean, this is your 8th grade year. After this, you are going to high school.
Mhm. Absolutely, and that's what pulled on my heartstrings the most last school year, that the 8th graders, they had to end their school year in turmoil, and some of them had been there since kindergarten. One of the little girls, she was on the court. We would do a Mardi Gras court coronation every single year, and she would be on there every single year since kindergarten. And she said her dream was to be Miss Impact when she gets to 8th grade. Well, guess what? 8th grade, she was Miss Impact, but it happened right at the time all of this happened. So she did not get the full experience of that and had to end up graduating with the rest of the 8th graders in this foreign old place that they were not accustomed to and is no will their own. So this year, a new school year has started. A lot of those families made a decision to just ride it out. But because as an educator, I know what kids should be getting every day. As far as instruction in the classrooms, families know what makes their child happy. So it breaks my heart that I know their intentions are one thing, but to know that they're not getting that, it's just so sad. And then the stability there. I mean, the leadership that they replaced me and my husband with now have announced they're leaving. So here we in the middle of the school year, once again, where it's about to be another shift in leadership, which means where there's not stability at the top, everything else will be unstable. So the kids are going to feel the impact of that.
Yes, yes, yes. And the other part of that is that you have mentioned several times that litigation is still ongoing, so it hasn't even been finalized. Decision hasn't even been ruled, and all of these changes have taken place, and all of these lives have already been impacted, as if that is even though it's still being litigated, there's already been a final decision.
Yeah.
And so,
And there's
yeah,
no telling how long it will take or anything, but it's so sad because we know what's going on.
and it also, as I'm thinking about, and I don't watch the news very often, and please understand that I'm going by what you're saying and what I have read. I am not in Baker. I am in Texas, and Again, actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, in Louisiana, I mean, and that's what I shared. Like that's the challenge of just the politics, how the politics of one person could start, and that was more than one person, different people who played a role. But it started with a bill that was sponsored. It's called SB 316, sponsored with Caroline Romer in the Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. She authored that bill with Blake Magass, who's a state senator, state senator here in Louisiana. I guess I'm gonna assume he did not know how it's going to be used. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. However, as soon as they got it passed, then that's when, not even 6 months later, is when it all started. Not caring that this have impacted hundreds of families, not caring that it has impacted that very angel investor I talked about at the beginning. Their investment has gone to in the gutter because what they invested in actually did work. But because of a political move, now you have them out of, possibly will be out of millions of dollars if this is not resolved soon. So it has impacted 450 families who are distressed, who friendships have been broken up. When you shared about your friendships earlier from your childhood and how just things that you remember about that school, same thing occurring at Impact Charter School. But now that has been disrupted for no reason at all.
And what I was thinking about, and I totally hear you, and I period. I totally hear you. And what I was thinking when I was talking about, like, I don't watch the news, I'm still hearing things, even though I'm not in Baker, right? But it seems like it seems like you are caught up in the crosshairs of several different elements. Number one, there's so much change going on now with schools and with limitations in schools, new policies in school as far as what should be taught, what should not be taught, as well as charter schools. Some people are agreeing with it, they're for it. Some say that the funds should be going to our public schools. And then in Louisiana, there's something going on with the mayor, I believe, who is a Black woman. And then there's DEI, when really you're the founder, so there is no DEI, right? But you are a Black woman in a high position. It seems like there's just so many different factors and possibilities of what really could have triggered it, what could have been the root.
Yeah, you just made a lot of great connections. I mean, yeah, what they're doing to the New Orleans mayor is a lot, and then how it compares to the counterpart. So when you talked about Geo earlier, here they were actually cited by the Louisiana Ethics Board, for their board members violating ethics law, giving themselves contracts, which is clearly against ethics law. However, they do nothing to their school, but they award them with new schools. I believe that they wanted to start getting rid of single site schools and start bringing in the franchise networks. So 3 years ago, if you look at how these things were unfolding, they approved Geo Prep to open in Baker. Even though Baker is such a small district, it did not have the capacity to handle another charter school when we already had two charter schools. So when it looks like the bigger play was to move Geo Prep in Baker, which they did in 3 years when our charter contract was going to be up. When it was time for us to be renewed, they were going to replace our board so that board can hand our school over to Geo Prep. And then that would be the two schools, charter schools in Baker, Geo Prep and the other CMO that's already in Baker. Also, there are schools that have been renewed that did not meet the criteria for renewal. They didn't have the letter grade. However, that school was renewed with no conditions, no restrictions. They had conditions, but they also had conditions during their last renewal. So they keep them open because they, I guess, or politically accepted. But a school like ours that was doing well, leaps and bounds, but we were one of the last single sites standing. We were the last single site school standing in East Baton Rouge Parish. We were attacked, and they used an audit with fabricated audit findings to distract the public through the news media to make it appear as if the school was doing something wrong to distract the public while they took on this heist of overtaking Impact Charter School and handing it over to the charter network of their choice.
Um, yeah, very, very, very sad. If you could speak to the children and the parents and even the teachers, because they're really just trying to pay their bills and still have a positive impact on the children. What would you want to tell them if they're listening right now? What would you say to them?
So if I can speak to the children, I would tell them to don't stop learning. Remember our motivational song, Something Inside So Strong. I know that I can make it even when they doing me wrong. And just keep playing those lyrics because things are going to shift, things are going to change. God does not forsake the righteous. They were caught in the middle, no fault of their own, and they're just trying to make the best of it. So hold on, things will get better. Use this as one of those opportunities to build your strength when you go through adversity, even when you're caught in the middle of it through no fault of your own, and just believe that things will turn around for the better. What I will say to the families is to really research your educational options. Sometimes it's hard to do what doesn't feel good, but just because something is comfortable doesn't mean it's best. And seek out your options. Know what your children are being exposed to. Don't allow your children to suffer in a situation that they don't have to. Not saying that they or aren't suffering. However, there are options. And I would strongly recommend to explore those options to make sure that you're selecting the best educational option for your child because we don't have time to waste. 1 year bad instruction takes 3 to 5 years to correct. And you don't want to waste that. Like I said, time is a non-renewable resource. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. So don't make things harder for yourself or for your child if you don't have to. You have the power to choose and choose options that mean well for you and your child and institutions that's going to do right by you and your child or your children. So I would say that to our parents and to the staff. That's a tough one, but I will and the reason why I say that is because my staff or my former staff have been with me, some of them for a very long time, and it's just amazing how the power of media works. One whoever controls the media controls the mind, and the ones that know me personally know me. So when that came out, it was just amazing quick how quick some of them were to believe it. But again, I understand how the media works. And, but that's the unfortunate thing. However, I will say to them, regardless of any of that, is to always work in purpose. And they know this is something I will say even before this or on the whichever side of it, because I've always shared that. And I've always shared, don't ever select your purposeful work for just a paycheck. Everybody on this earth is bigger than a paycheck. When you operate in your gifts, the paycheck will find you. Don't continue to be a part of something that is a disservice to our community, the disservice to our kids. Now, if they don't feel that way, then that's okay. You can do whatever you feel. But there's been enough information and enough time has passed where it's clearly no one's winning from what has happened. No one is winning right now. And what's most important are the kids. And even though you may feel, well, yeah, I'm winning, I have a job, but how long would that last? Because only what we do for Christ will last. So take deep reflection. And the staff that came a part of Impact, you came because you saw the bigger picture. Because I sat in on every interview. I wouldn't have hired them on if they did not believe in the mission and the vision of what we were trying to do. They wanted to be a part of something bigger. And that's what I believe based on what they shared with me in their interview. So when you a part of something bigger, it always don't come with a direct paycheck. It come with intention, it come with direction, it comes with guidance and purpose. And your heart, your inner spirit have to guide that. If our kids are suffering, we shouldn't help them suffer. And that has to be a deep reflection within each one of them to deep soul searching on, am I helping the problem or enabling problem, or am I part of the problem, or am I going to do something about this problem?
You have said it. You have said it. That was so heartfelt, and I am positive that those scholars, those parents, and those teachers hear you and feel you. And what you said about the media and how it's really just doing its job. I just did a podcast episode, and the title of it was "When You've Been Lied On."
Mm,
And I did that because there's something different about people who have been lied on. When you have been lied on, if that is the case right now,
yes,
yes, when you have been lied on, you don't hear the same. You don't treat people the same. You don't listen to everything that comes out and believe it and jump on the bandwagon. You actually listen to what's said and what is unsaid. You
yes,
listen for
yes,
those gaps. You listen for those inconsistencies. You see how character plays a part. Have they displayed this before? Is this in them? What have I seen? What have I experienced? What is the proximity? I mean, I spoke about all of this, and I can see how that relates to what you're going through right now. What I hear you saying you're going through.
mm-hmm,
And so again, when you've been lied on, you listen differently. And so for those who haven't experienced that, I encourage you to just pause and to listen to all the facts and review your sources and reflect on your interactions, because I know what it's like, not in school, but in the workplace,
yes,
with managers who are not leaders, with false employee evaluations, challenging HR, challenging management, working my way up to the CEO. And it's like, at some point, it's like you're just thinking, if you would just ask the right questions, you'll get to the truth.
yes, that's a better
If
question.
you just if you just ask the right questions, you will get to the truth. And it wasn't until I got to the CEO, because what a lot of people don't understand is everything that happens in the middle isn't always seen. Sometimes you have to go all the way to the top. I don't the corporate ladder, that's something that I could talk about on a different day. But sometimes you have to go to the top. And when I went to the top, he didn't know anything that was going on, right? And he said, "Okay, well, I heard your side, but now I'm going to go speak to the manager." And the one thing that I will never forget he said is, because if you ask enough questions, you'll get to the truth.
Mm,
And I don't know what he thought my response was going to be, but I was like, finally. Ask all the questions.
mm,
Find those gaps and those omissions and those untruths and those wavering responses. I'm here for it,
yeah,
you know? And that manager was, given another chance, and then eventually terminated. And so I encourage everyone to not always jump on the bandwagon of what you hear because it's not always factual. Sometimes there's agendas behind it and other types of motives. So
Yes,
I
I agree.
I hear you. I hear your heart,
Thank you.
right? So it's not always about what you hear, but it's what I feel as you're speaking. Okay?
Thank you for that.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, we've talked about, and I know I know this has been a long conversation.
No,
I'm enjoying it, and like I said,
I am too.
you are good. I really want to make sure that I have a full understanding and that everyone listening has a full, because we get nowadays it's so hard to hear and believe what you're hearing, right?
Yes,
And everything I've been asking you has been so consistent. You can't an apple tree can't produce oranges.
yes,
You can't have a certain output and be a certain person, right? Or make certain decisions. It has to align with your
yes,
fruit.
that's true.
You've spoken about how everyone's been impacted and what your message to them. How have you been impacted? How has your husband been impacted, both individually and collectively? Because you were in one position, he was in another, and you're both husband and wife. What has that experience been like?
So my family has been impacted a lot by this, unfortunately. Going back to not only you appoint this replacement board unlawfully, but then the replacement board goes and file their own litigation suing me, my husband, my daughter, my mom, who has nothing to do they with the audit or anything. So now we're being dragged through this, costing them resources and time and stress, and just having that stigma and that dark cloud over them just because they're attached to me. And I'm, where I was unfairly targeted. But for nevertheless, they have been very supportive. They've been more concerned about me and my well-being. And, they know I'm strong, even though I'm human, but they just seeing their strength and how they continue to try to encourage me, even though I know is a lot on them. It's just been very uplifting and just amazing to see. It's unfortunate that, his career has to be attacked because of it, and or when all we were trying to do was do something good and transform the community and impact kids and do all of this, and it's, it's just so opposite of what you expect. But it goes back to us believing. That's when you have to have this monster faith in God, just knowing that it's something bigger. He wouldn't bring us this far to burn it down disgracefully. He has something bigger for us to do. And my daughter, who she graduated college in the midst of it all. She started her graduate program. So just keeping her uplifted and strong. My parents have been very astronomical and a blessing in all of this. My sister has just been a rock through all of this. My mentor, Shauna Banks, who's a leader here in Louisiana, has just been such a blessing. And my legal team have been amazing. So a lot, God has blessed us with a lot of different resources. My original board, have been just a blessing. I mean, and I hope I'm not leaving anybody out, but God has made sure he put the people in place needed to weather the storm. Not saying that it's easy, but that's when you're stretched. That's when you grow through adversity. You never known of I can't think of a time where I've grew in just a regular season where everything's going good. But even though it doesn't feel good, even though I don't understand it, even though it seems like it's taken a long time, it's just keep putting one foot forward each day, and each day asking God for that daily bread. every single day. And, that's how you have to do it. And each day he shows me something else. He gives me something else. It's like, so it's working over time. And I just have to think back through the adversity when we started the school, when it looked like it wasn't going to happen, when it looked like I did all of this only to be told no, or when I finally got through the finish line, I'm told no another way. So he had not failed me then. And look where we are today, and I just have to believe the same thing because it did look impossible then. So I use that to remind me that what looks impossible, he can make possible, and he's going to one day reveal the reason why. So just trying to strengthen my faith and get on an even deeper level with God, because that's what I also believe that's happening as well, to call me to get even deeper with him, so I can clearly understand with no mistakes and not get complacent that when it's done, it's his doing. He gets the glory. The success of the school, he gets the glory. We wouldn't have been able to do any of it if it wasn't for him making provisions to make those things happen and bring the right people for it to happen. So my family has been very important through all of this. I don't know what I would do without them, as well as those close friends, my board president, those closely around me, my prayer warriors, and that has really helped, because trust me, it's not for the weak or not for the faint at heart, but I mean, it's worth every moment to be able to do what I do and impact lives. And when I see those kids and when they tell me how I've impacted their lives, and when they tell me how the families tell me how their kids are still impacted by that reminds me, it makes it so much worth it, everything I've gone through.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And what I heard with all of that is greatness demands greater.
I like that.
So when you are doing something great, it demands something even greater from you. And there's no way to get to greatness without the challenges, without some kind of resistance training, even in exercising, which I'm trying to get to the gym. But even
Me too.
even even in in everything that we do, to be great, it demands you to do greater, to do bigger. Now, and just like trailblazing requires fire,
Mm,
and fire is transformational. We can't always think of it as it burning down, but it's recreating
I like
is
that.
what I'm seeing right now. And so with this litigation still going on, nothing is final. The fat lady has not sang, and God is the author of all of it. It is possible for it to be ruled in your favor. What happens with the children in the school now? You said the school is sitting, the kids have been moved to the other school. How do you foresee that correcting itself?
Well, that's a very multi-layered question and approach. First thing, the organization needs to go back to its rightful governance. That's one thing. Now, the board will have to get on the same page at that point of the mission moving forward, because what has taken place so far, the contract with the original board actually expired June 30th, but that board was also renewed for another 6 years. And the board has to have very deep conversations about, will a healthy relationship, is that even possible with this same Bessie board that has done all of this and have cost all of this money in litigation, all of this turmoil, all of this distress? So is that the same Bessie board you want to go back into contract with? So that is a very serious conversation that the board members will have to have as it pertains to what happens to Impact Charter School as everyone knew it. So it's kind of tough to answer that question right now. And right now, I guess the focus is on justice. Like, how do we get justice? There has been an injustice to one, the children. Of course, they have had the worst injustice of it all. There's been an injustice to the board. It's been an injustice to me, of my life's work and my career. It's been an injustice to the community, to the investors of that facility. It's been an injustice to the developers who were starting to build homes in the community around the school that has come to a halt after all of this has happened. It's been an injustice to the homes that were already there whose property values now are going down because now it's a blight property there for no reason at all, that could have been avoided. They have hurt hundreds to thousands and have impacted lives for years and years to come because of that selfish political agenda and move that has taken place. So, but it does not mean that we cannot impact. It doesn't mean that we cannot still impact that community in a way that's innovative, that's purposeful, and that's impactful. It just may look a little different. So that's what the board has to come to terms of. What does it look like moving forward based on what our community needs, based on where the world is going and where we are today? It brings us to have conversations on what that will look like. But until we get there, the first step is getting that justice in the court system and the heavenly court system as far as holding those accountable of what has done to get the kids out of this suffering that they are in. And
Okay,
it
I
may,
hear you.
and that can look different, like different ways.
Okay, okay. And I can see how there's so many moving parts there. So I totally see how you really have to think about and figure out, okay, this goes first for sure, and then and as well as justice, and then all these other pieces, and then also thinking about the Bessie portion as well. Now,
Hmm.
going through all that, and as I mentioned in the beginning, you are also the CEO of Edu Strategies,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And you are helping those founders create. Well, tell us about Edu Strategies, what exactly you do, because I believe all of this has given you experience and knowledge and wisdom that no one else has, because you're going through something that no one else has really has gone through.
Yes.
And so your insight and your experience will be so helpful for those who are up and coming, who are coming behind you. So tell us exactly what you do at Edu Strategies.
So thank you for that. Absolutely. So Edu Strategies, a lot of different moving parts. The primary mission of Edu Strategies is to help develop other leaders, help leaders start schools, help leaders start, whether it's charter schools, micro schools, private schools. When I first started years ago, there weren't a lot of people or consultants or organizations out there that can guide step by step. What do I do to open a school? What do I need to know? Opening a school requires so much more than just buying books, hiring a teacher, getting a building and a facility. It's so many other moving parts that you have to understand. You have to understand legislation. You have to understand how those laws impact your operations. You have to understand how certain laws impact how you operate, how you hire staff, how you certain risk management, how do you comply. There are other components with running a school. You're not just running a school, you're running a school district. So when it comes to food services, when it comes to transportation, when it comes to federal programming, when it comes to instruction, when it comes to professional development, when it comes to student safety, when it comes to parent engagement, I mean, it's so many different moving parts that if you don't have all of those components well thought out and mastered, you will set yourself up for failure. And it's so many things that you have to do just in planning year and on the front end, whether it's a charter school, a micro school, or a private school. However, there is a lot of untapped talent out there for leaders who can start successful schools but don't have the know-how or the mentorship or the infrastructure to do it. So that's where Edu strategies come in to help those leaders start the schools based on the mission or the vision of their school idea or their desire and what they want to do, who they want to target, where they want to target. We're the go-to place for that expertise. And the other side of it is advocacy as far as to make sure what has happened to me, what has happened to Impact Charter School doesn't happen to another leader, does not happen to another school or single site or organization or board again throughout the country, to make sure that we are tracking the developments of any such injustice that's setting up to happen, and what schools and teaching those leaders and organizations and boards what can be done to prevent it, to stop it in its tracks, or to advocate or who to advocate to make sure that kids don't suffer, because at the end of the day they get the brunt end of the stick, and regardless of what happened, that's who we're trying to protect in the end. So to make sure that it doesn't trickle all the way down so where kids are feeling that suffering, how do we stop it? How do we become engaged? How do we hold our legislators accountable? How do we educate the community to make sure that they understand who to hold accountable and what are we holding them accountable for and to do what? I think there's a big gap in our communities as far as the roles of elected officials and our legislators and what they're supposed to do. They're not just elected to give out free backpacks and crawfish balls when it's time for votes. It's them things there.
Okay, Louisiana.
Oh yeah, yeah, crawfish balls. Yeah, yeah, Louisiana. We love our crawfish balls,
I
which
love it. I love it.
that's part of that process. They know that. And it's like we have to ask for more. We have to ask for more for our communities, because if not, we're going to suffer in the end. We're going to feel the long term effects. But if our parents aren't aware, if our students aren't aware, then we continue to get what we get. And that's whatever's left over, or whatever they decide to give it to us. And that's not right. I mean, they're our tax dollars too. And we have to demand what was owed to us for our community. So it's important that we raise that awareness, we teach that piece, and that we start that type of movement to make sure that we are positioned to protect ourselves and our communities.
I love it. And
Mhm.
who better to assist these up and coming school leaders, advocates for the community and for the children than someone who has already done it and shown it and proven it to be successful and have received the accolades, the awards, have used their own funds, have taken on multiple hats, received funding, met challenges head on, challenged the status quo. I mean, I could go
Mm.
on and on and on. And what I didn't mention at the very beginning is when I said I met you at Good Soil and there was a young lady in between us, I did not mention that was actually your daughter.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you actually brought your daughter, and I didn't see anyone else who did, or, of course you can't recognize that, but you actually brought your own daughter to an entrepreneurial conference to listen, to learn, to receive, to get those creative juices flowing. And I say that to say that what you are doing for your own child, you are doing for your communities.
Absolutely.
You are treating them just as if they were your own child, right? I have children and they didn't come with me to the conference, but this is something that you truly believe in. This is who you actually are. And another thing that I'm thinking of as you're speaking is that there are so many coaches out here
Mhm.
who have never done what they've coached.
Mm.
There are business teachers who have never owned a business. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing because having the education is a great thing, and it will be great if they could really understand what actually goes on in business. That's my opinion, even though I respect everyone in their profession and all that. But I say all that to say that okay, let me tie it into your core values. Your core values are safe, organized, achiever, respectful, and responsible. And so you have exemplified that.
Thank you.
You have expected that from others. And I wanted to bring that into what I'm saying because you didn't just jump into having a school. You started with observing and seeing the needs of the community and started your education explosion with tutoring, actually solving that problem in summer camps. And then it grew to a charter school, impact charter school. And now it's going to edu strategies. So
Yeah.
you're not skipping all over the place. You're not starting from the top. You are actually using your experience and it growing and evolving into something bigger each and every time. So I commend you for that.
Thank
I
you.
respect you for that. Yes. And it's very important for that to be um not everyone does that, but you are doing
Yeah.
that and you are leading by example. You are setting values that you follow. One thing I can't stand is for there to be mission statements and vision statements, and no one is following it except for the people at the bottom of the
That's a good
the
point. That's a good point. And I guess it leads back to that intentionality. You know, I've always been very intentional about what I do and why. I don't believe in doing something just for the sake of it. I don't just spin my wheels just to spin them. Going back to like even bringing my daughter to the conference, I mean, she has a very entrepreneurial spirit. It's nothing that I forced her to have. It's just something she's naturally has. She's a creative. However, just like I share with the leaders that I develop, you talent and creativity opens that door, but it doesn't help you to soar. You know, you have to know the basics of running an operation, a business, an organization. You have to be, if you don't have that understand the science of business and operations, your talent becomes just a hobby and it doesn't serve you or you can't serve the people at maximum capacity that your gifts would allow you to do without that real world experience. So I do believe, just like with our scholars, you take your gifts and you teach them how to apply them and the things that you need to put with them in order for it to really bring it all to life. Just having a saying I'm going to do something and I don't have experience in it, one, I will be doing them a disservice or myself a disservice because I can't operate at maximum capacity if I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. You're not gonna see me at a medical conference talking about the new vaccine or I know, absolutely. And it's nothing about it's like I'm just not good at it. I don't like it. And no matter what it pays, what opportunity walks through the door, I'm just not going to do it because I will be doing myself a disservice, everyone there a disservice, and I'm not going to be passionate about it because that's not what I'm trying to do. So I'd always encourage people to know what your gifts are. If you don't know, that should be your first assignment to figure that out and then to operate in that purpose because now you're actually bringing change. Sometimes people do things like you said, they'll teach a class they're not familiar with they do it because it's opportunity. It's a paycheck and you can't get maximum fulfillment just doing something because of a paycheck. You'll always go to work frustrated. You'll be ready to go as soon as you clock in. You'll dread going there every day. You're going to be frustrated with the people who you have to interact with, even though it's not their fault that you're upset or frustrated. And it's going to be that what they call just the chase, the rat race. So it's so important to find what it is where you fit in this world and in this universe. I mean, everybody has a gift. I mean, all of our gifts are different, some of them similar, but it's something you can do better than anybody else. And you tap into what that is and use it to impact those in the world around you. And and that's what I've always done. And I'm just happier that way, just taking what I know. I didn't start off, like I said, I didn't know I would land in education in the way that I have, but I've always been a creator, a builder, a innovator. Like, so that part of me doesn't change no matter what industry I'm in. So I may not want to talk about the expertise of the content itself, but it doesn't mean that I can't bring that industry into the innovation of what I do. So I may not be a person who loves medicine, but it doesn't mean that I can't innovate a medical summer program for kids and families that actually have an interest in that and a skill set in that, and connect them with other medical experts and creatives that can bring that idea to life. So just taking those ideas, and everybody, and like I said, entrepreneurship, that is a gift as well as a skill set. If that's not who someone is, it's something they do, because you need all things, all pieces to the puzzle to make it. So, for example, the school, I may be the leader of the school and the founder of the school, but without teachers, the school doesn't work. Without support staff, the school doesn't work. Without janitors, the school doesn't work. Without our cafeteria team, the school doesn't work. Without bus drivers, the school doesn't work. We've had a lot of sad days when we were short of drivers. Like, it was painful because we couldn't get on the bus and drive. So I valued that skill of them. Like, oh my God, you know how to do something I cannot do, even if I wanted to, and we need you so bad. So, so all of it all works together, but those are their gifts, those are their skills. And when they know that and they operate in that, it they come part of this ecosystem, the bigger picture of how we all impact change together. We just all have different roles in what we play in that process.
Yes, yes, yes. And what I heard is purpose and people over profit. And as you
Yes.
said, we all have a role. And I've spent so much time by myself during certain years and seasons of my life. And I had to really think about, okay, where am I? Why am I here? Why am I having these challenges? And I started to really think about who I was and what caused me to be in certain positions, what caused me to face certain challenges. And what I came to the realization was, and it ended up being my name as an acronym, is I was in a position because I treat people how I want to be treated, and not everyone does that, right?
Mhm.
And so I considered that as karma, because if what goes out comes back, not in a spiritual sense, but in a moral sense, then we should treat people how we want to be treated. If we use discernment in our intuition when we make decisions, that's something that I would feel, and then I would move away from it. And so that caused me to be in certain positions, right? So the I is intuition. And then mindfulness. I always extend grace and empathy and understanding, because I realize that we all have different lived and unlived experiences. So using that mindfulness and that understanding, and together, I truly believe that karma, intuition, mindfulness is what we all need to create unity. Like you said, bringing it all together, coming to that purpose of serving each other and our purpose, because our purpose isn't just for us, it is to benefit those around us.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and I was gonna and I agree with that. But the what I've learned, and especially going through this, treating people how I would want to be treated, because that was one of the things that I was at first disappointed about, because again, I'm that advocate where if I see something wrong, oh, let's go and stand up against it. And like, so in 2022, when I saw the writing on the wall where they were trying to put this other school in Baker to in the future take it over, I knew that would be a disservice to this school district. It's one of the very few small all black school districts left in the state, and this wouldn't they wouldn't have never overtaken a whole community of schools where the district is left with zero schools, just about. And but they're only doing it because they know that community isn't going to fight back. So, me organizing the community and its leaders, look, I'm trying to tell y'all based on what I know, this is what's going to happen to y'all. Let's go down there, which they did. We all got together and went down there, which is probably why I also got targeted. I don't know. But um 3 years later, which is now, it's happening to me. Those same leaders are quiet. They, matter of fact, some of them even helped assist in making this happen. And for the longest, I was like, I don't understand. I mean, why would, if I didn't treat them that way, why would they treat me that way? And, you just come to the realization that me treating people how I would want to be treated, they may be doing the same thing, but that's not how they would want to be treated. They may expect that because that's how they operate. So if they operate that way, they expect me to operate that way. And it's going to always be that disconnect. So I've learned to save myself a whole lot of stress when I just remove the expectations. You only become upset with people when you have an expectation of them that they did not meet. So when you remove that expectation, it doesn't phase you either way. And then that's when you just have to let only voice and direction that you should be listening to is God based on his will for what he has you to do on this earth and to build his kingdom. And that's what keep me focused and grounded, is not disappointed based on the actions of everybody else, because it's not going to ever match up, and I will live my whole life being frustrated and upset by that.
I totally hear you. And that part when I said that it can't just be by itself. It also has to be a combination of the others with understanding that everyone, as far as the mindfulness, everyone doesn't agree with you. As you interact and see how people truly are, then that's when you'll be able to use that intuition and be like, okay, this is not that. So I totally hear you. You can't rely on one or the other, but above all, trust God for sure. For sure, for sure. I
Mhm.
thank you so much for your
Yes.
time. We have covered so much. I thank you for being open and lending your experience and your knowledge and sharing what you're currently going through. I encourage everyone who's listening, type in the comments what you think about this. Reach out to Dr. Scott with any kind of encouragement or advice or what you really felt about her responses. Where can they reach out to you? How can they get in contact if they would like to just follow you, support you? How can they follow you?
So, you can follow me on Facebook, Shakesha Webb Scott. That's spelled Chakesha, Webb, Webb, and then Scott. I'm also on Instagram, but mainly either LinkedIn and Facebook is where I'm the most active. And also, you can visit my website at edustrategies.org, and that's spelled EDUSTRATEGIES.org. And or you can email me directly, either at ShakeshaScott@gmail.com or Dr. C. Scott at edustrategies.org. And yes, I would love to hear from everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chakesha Scott. You all, I thank you for listening. You have been tuned in to the KimUnity Solutions podcast with your host, Kim the SME, special guest, Dr. Chakesha Scott. Until next time, You all be blessed. Bye-bye.
Bye.